This podcast contains spoilers, so listen at your own risk or call back after you've watched the movie.
You know who you call. Leave a message. Maybe they'll call you back. Then again, maybe they won't.
We're having ourselves quite a little game of phone tag here.
Ring, ring, ring. I usually get this guy's answering machine.
I'll call you right back.
If you're there, please pick up the phone. I really want to talk to you.
I check my fucking messages every day when I come home from work. My answering machine, zero. I got a blinking light.
All I have to do is pick up this phone right here, inform the cinema, and your plan's kaput.
No, I ain't got no phone. I had to pull, because people calling all the time, and who needs the aggravation, right? Interruptions.
Hey, Matt. Tuesday morning, just walking out of the house now, headed into the office. Bit of a ominous sky, but hopefully I'll manage to make it into work dry. I think it's going to be sunny for my walk home. Watched Faraway So Close last night, film you're very aware of. This past winter we watched a good number of Wim Wenders movies. We started with, what was it, Perfect Days. Perfect Days is just the one that kind of got us obsessed, and we ended up kind of going back and hitting a lot of his significant works. And I think the last one, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the last one that we watched was 1987's Wings of Desire, which is one of the few Wim movies that I had seen prior to going back and watching all these old movies. And I'd seen it fairly recently. I'd seen it in the last sort of 5 years, I think. And even though I'd already seen it, and even though I knew it had a sequel, watching it earlier this year, I was still flabbergasted to see it end with the title cards along the lines of "to be continued." I can't remember exactly what it says, but it clearly states at the end of the movie that there will be a sequel, that this story is going to go on. And that's fascinating, because Wings of Desire is the epitome of the type of film that does not have a sequel. I think by the time we got to that, Wings of Desire that is, we still had some appetite left for Wim movies, but we also been going pretty hard on his catalogue, and a lot of his movies aren't particularly short, and we've sort of been watching exclusively Wim this for quite a while, or at least I had. I think you've probably been sneaking in a whole bunch of other movies around it, but I feel like we hit a point where it looked like maybe it was going to be diminishing returns largely from then on out. So yeah, I don't think we have formally decided let's park this here and this is the end of it. But for one reason or another, we didn't keep going with the Vim movies. We must have watched maybe 5 or 6 and then kind of ended it. But there's always been a few pieces of unfinished business that I felt. One is that we didn't hit any of his documentaries, which is, his kind of like a major part of his filmography, is that he's a very, very acclaimed documentary filmmaker. Another was that we didn't watch anything before Alice in the Cities, so we kind of saw we started with something where he's already kind of found his thing to an extent, and I was a bit curious about some of his more formative work, because he has a number of films before Alice in the Cities. The big one that was kind of hanging there as like A, unfinished business, but B, I'll never be more primed to watch this movie, was the sequel to Wings of Desire, Faraway So Close. And I've watched it now, I don't know, maybe 4 months after watching Wings of Desire. I'm not quite sure, but give or take. And my memory is absolutely fucking hopeless. Like I can barely remember a movie I watched last week, never mind one I watched 4 months ago. So of course, I remember like the broad narrative strokes of Wings of Desire. You know, Bruno Ganz plays an angel who wants to be human and is kind of like desiring this circus girl, and then he gets his wish and he becomes human, and we see him kind of like his initial sort of steps through human life. But the film is much more than that. It's more of an atmospheric film. It's more of a portrait of a city, literally the entire populace of a city, it feels like. And it's a vibe. I think there was definitely stepping so far away from Vim movies. I mean, some of the recent movies that I've seen are Mission Impossible Final Reckoning and Ballerina. So I haven't got my Vim hat on anymore. Going back to this one, it was a bit of a like, okay, all right, where are we again? Both narratively, but maybe even more so just stylistically. It's also quite different in many ways, or at least seems to be. Again, my memory is not perfect, but this movie, Far Away So Close, to whatever ability I have to recall the earlier Vim movies, this film feels a bit like a sort of greatest hits, to put it in a particularly kind of glib way, of Vim. The obvious manifestation of that is the cast, which is like, I mean, it's all of his people. So you've got the actors from the first Vim movie, Otto Sander, Bruno Ganz, Peter Falk, weirdly. You've got the girl, Solvig, something or other, who's in a few Vim movies. I think she died young. But, you know, a lot of those actors are both from Wings of Desire, but also from several Wim Wenders movies. But then on top of that, you got the likes of Rüdiger Volger, Natasha Kinski, Hans Schiffler, or whatever he's called, the guy from Kings of the Road, pops up in a small role. So it's very much like, this is the ultimate, it's kind of like his like Kill Bill or something, where it's like, this is the ultimate movie that's like, everything I've done in my career is like in here, in terms of the cast, but also it's a weird mishmash of a lot of things that a lot of types of film he's made. So I remember when we watched Wrong Move, I believe it's called, how I kind of struggled with that one a bit because it is so philosophical, but like in a very verbose way. So it's not like philosophical themes that you can choose to latch onto if you want. It's actual people constantly talking about, like in a kind of not abstract way, but like they're talking about their philosophies rather than you know, most of the Vim movies that I've loved, where people are more just, if they are talking at all, they're talking about what's literally happening right there in the present. And the Wings of Desire had that philosophical thing, but the great thing about it is it's people's internal monologues, and it's only snatches. So you get, you know, instead of getting, like in Wrong Move, massive big long monologues of someone's outlook on the world, you'll get like a snatch of like 1 or 2 lines of dialogue that kind of all come together to paint a portrait of a populace. This one, like Wings of Desire, has got that sort of philosophical bent to it. It also obviously has like so much of that. I mean, back when we were watching Vim all the time, I was working through my Wim Wenders bingo card every time. I was like, okay, like navigating through a city, relationship with children, all of these recurring themes that would happen over and over again. And it has all of that stuff, but it even has what we saw in The American Friend, or An American Friend, or Our American Friend. I always forget the title of that movie exactly, but it's got that crime noir thriller plot element to it. And it's when you see people like Vulgar pop up, you're immediately thinking about earlier Vim movies. So in a way, it's everything that he's done up until this point, and it's also obviously a sequel to one of his most iconic movies, maybe top 2 most iconic movies. So it's you know, you're in full blown Vim land, but also it's the type of Vim that I love the most, which is Kings of the Road, Alice in the Cities, and I would say the new one that set us down this route in the first place, Perfect Days. That brand of Vim, that's like, just watch people go about their life, just sort of moving around, and you kind of get a sense of who they are. That is my favorite Vim, and that is like here in this film 100%, like all the other Vims, but it's so diluted by the other stuff that this isn't one of my favorites. It's fascinating viewing. Like I said, this is not the type, like Wings of Desire is just not the type of movie that gets a sequel. So seeing, I mean, I would say that this film does justify the like its existence. Sorry, there's teenagers walking on the wrong side of the road, and like bicycles chaotically weaving around. Some little distracted here. Getting off this cycle path now. Yeah, it's the format of, let's take a supporting character from the first movie and have him be the protagonist is good. I'm not sure if I've seen that before. I was trying to think of examples of have I seen that. I've seen the Three Colors trilogy, which is kind of like 3 films made at once rather than like making a sequel to an older movie, but it has got that thing where like they're all focused on different characters, but the main characters of one movie will be like briefly in the other movie. But in this case, Bruno Ganz is like a major supporting character in this film, and Otto Sander is a major character in the previous film, but they've flipped the dynamic. And I like if you've already made a movie about what would it be like if this angel character became human and had to like walk through our society anew. I also like the idea, the sort of like narrative experiment of what would it be like if this other angel character had that same thing happen. Like, what's another way that could go down? That's interesting. They're different. Bruno Ganz is very resolved on wanting to be human in the first movie, whereas Otto Sander in this mentions it. He's definitely very curious about it, but it's not a deliberate act. He intervenes, which I guess is probably against the rules. He intervenes to save a young girl's life, and thus enters our world, and we get to see what we see in Wings of Desire, that initial excitement of like, I can eat and I can experience all these human things that I've always watched as an outsider. But unlike Bruno Ganz, it doesn't really work out for him. Like he cannot bridge that gap in a healthy way, and he ends up falling into like sort of self-destructive patterns, and that's interesting. But then the movie kind of gets swallowed up by a thriller plot, if you want to call it, or thriller's the right word, but just by Vim's standards, it's like a crime thriller plot, or sort of like screwball, Guy Ritchie fun crime movie type thing or something. I'm not sure what the best like comparison is, but you obviously know what I'm referring to. You've seen the film. The story that is this kid Anton, who's left with his father during World War II to America, has grown up to become a sort of like dodgy businessman, and he's come back and he's hired a private detective to investigate what he believes, or maybe prior to the events of the movie, maybe like initially just like find and then ultimately investigate and monitor this family, or kind of like makeshift family, because the driver, the chauffeur is part of it, and they're like his estranged family that stayed behind in Germany. And then we see that, but we also see lots of stuff that's centered around his now life as a gangster and the gangster politics with another rival gangster, and then his stash of World War II weapons, which then turns into this like screwball, almost like Jean-Pierre Jeunet type plot for the circus people to retrieve those weapons. And like all that stuff is different to Wings of Desire, and different to like the first half of this movie in a way. It's there in the first half of the movie. It's kind of background, and you don't realize how much the film is going to become like a very plot-heavy movie. And I remember when I watched Wings of Desire earlier this year, weirdly, I actually warmed to the film more when it became like a direct plot of, now he's a guy, now he's like a character that we can follow, and we're just following him on his journey. I end up liking the film more in that mode than when it was just sort of like impressionistic, floating around, grab a bit of this person's inner monologue, a bit of this person's inner monologue, switching from angel to angel, little moments. But in this case, I think the film is kind of, maybe it's because it's similar to the third act of Wings of Desire from the jump, but when it becomes more of a direct plot story, I think you lose some of the magic of what I think you lose a lot of the magic, in my opinion, of what these films, the Wings franchise has to offer. The stuff, the black and white stuff in like the first 2/3 of Wings of Desire, I really enjoyed the first time I saw that movie, and I really enjoyed it this year after seeing the movie, kind of just like reflecting on it and thinking about it, and I just was a bit restless while I was watching it. In this one, we get a bit of that, and it's like, it's really good, and it's a bit less abstract, because you've got Otto Sander frequently visiting Bruno Ganz and kind of looking in on people that we know, and then you've got him interacting with this other angel played by Natasha Kinski that seems to be someone he has a very strong connection with. So it's a bit less arty, and it's a bit more of like direct plot, characters, relationships, that kind of stuff. And then when he becomes human, his initial adventures in town, again, it's very Wings of Desire with like the Lou Reed. With the last movie, it was Nick Cave who does the theme song at the end of this, I think. And yeah, it's all good stuff. But when it becomes a gangster crime thriller thing or something, there's not much Wings DNA left in it. There is an interesting character who's like a major part of the plot as it progresses, but who I really struggle to pin down, and that's the character played by Willem Dafoe. So maybe this is either supposed to be really easy to understand, or maybe it is really easy to understand for other people. Maybe you found it easy to understand. For me, I didn't get at all what he was, who he was. Like, is he a demon? Is he a bad angel? Is he not even bad? Like, is he some sort of important balancing presence on a cosmic level? Like, early in the film, we would generally see him doing things that are kind of questionable. Not questionable, just like he seems like a classic bad supernatural character. And then the more the film progresses, the more it's like he's on the same side as our heroes. And there's this debate between him and Natasha Kinski that kind of happens in the sidelines throughout the film about like his approach essentially to being whatever he is, an angel or a demon or an onlooker or some sort of magical presence or whatever. But I never latched onto anything concrete with the Willem Dafoe character and found that a bit distracting, although I think Willem Dafoe is good in it. And as I was watching, I was like, man, this guy's got one fucking hell of a career, because he's obviously got films with great iconic directors like Scorsese, Last Temptation, and lots of like, you know, really significant work. He's now obviously part of Robert Eggers' company. But then even if you go to like him working with directors that had absolutely zero stock when they made the movie that he's in, things like Boondock Saints and American Psycho, like that is, he just either has an amazing agent or he has an incredible eye for projects. He's done a lot of stuff with Abel Ferrara in the last few years. So yeah, anyway, nice. That's another Wimism, is like random foreign actor that you're like, oh, Wim's got this guy in a movie. He's done that in Perfect Days. He's done that in The American Friend. He's done that in Wings of Desire with Peter Falk. And now he's done it again with throwing Willem Dafoe into the mix. Now, his cachet must have been absolutely enormous in '93. I think, I'm not 100% sure on this, but I think I remember reading that Wings of Desire was made because he was like planning or in pre-production or something on that giant sci-fi movie he made with Willem Hurt, which is like almost 5 hours long and is another bit of unfinished business that may remain unfinished till my dying day, but definitely something that I'm curious about. I forget the name of it. It's also got this Solvig girl in it, but that was such a giant ambitious project that I think like either building the sets or getting the funding together, some element of pre-production was going to be so long that he made Wings of Desire in that space. That could be completely wrong, but that's I have a vague memory of that. And then he makes Wings of Desire, he makes another movie because he's just so prolific, and then he makes that sci-fi movie, and then he makes this, and we're at peak Wim's cachet. Like a lot of his films that we've seen, quite naturally, feature references to the Third Reich, older characters, because he almost always has older characters in his movies, older characters who lived through that, young characters who are living under the shadow of like that recent history. And this, to my memory, is the first one I've seen that actually has the budget to go back and show scenes during World War II, which is interesting. Kind of nice to have followed him through so many of the films that earned him that platform and that kind of budget. And then I think it probably all just is disappearing around this time as well, because it's not like after this film he's got like some giant blockbuster. Although I haven't seen the film straight after this, so that's more things for me to investigate. But yeah, anyway, Faraway, So Close. I enjoyed it. It wasn't the transformative Vim experience. I thought about sending you a voice note last night after I'd watched it. Then I remembered my my Vim rule of marinate on it. The film, like your experience with the film, partially takes place in the 2 or 3 hours sat down watching it, but it largely plays out in the following days as you're kind of meditating on it. And it hasn't proven to be like this amazing transformative experience that some of his films have been. I think it's hurt by the fact that I've already seen Wings of Desire, so a lot of its best tricks are kind of already almost like assumed content when I'm going into this film. This film may do certain things better than Wings of Desire, but once you've already seen that thing done once, even if you see it done better, it doesn't have the impact of seeing it for the first time. So it's a good movie. I think it was a good central performance. And I'm not sure what other movies Otto Sanders in. I'm not sure if he's part of the Vim company or if it's just these two movies, but that was a good central performance. Yeah, I found the Napsy family history plot fairly dull, and I found the gangster stuff sort of tonally incoherent with what I liked about this film. But it's still a Vim movie, so you still get great scenes, like when like the excitement of Bruno Ganz picking him up in the police cell, bringing him back to his apartment and feeding him, and knowing from personal experience what that experience is going to be like for him. And there's numerous scenes in this film that are like, yeah, that's classic Wings of Desire, like that's classic Wim. But because it's a long movie, it's over 2.5 hours long, it has plenty of room for things that aren't setting my world on fire at all. So yeah, mixed bag. Definitely not a film that I want to be too harsh on, because it's like its major crimes are being like, I didn't like it as much as other Wim movies, I didn't like it as much as Wings of Desire, so there's no reason to go overboard and be like, this is fucking terrible, it's not a 5-star masterpiece and I'll accept nothing less. But yeah, nice to be back with Wim though after all these months, and curious to see what you thought of it. Hey man, I absolutely stuffed myself full of that lovely bread you made me that I took back from Bristol. So now I'm heading out to the park trying to walk it off. But when I say I stuffed myself, I really fucking stuffed myself full of it. Like, I think I ate a quarter of the loaf, dipped it in some hummus. That wasn't the only thing I had. But anyway, I was reluctant to go back to Wim. I originally was going to watch this movie, Faraway, So Close, immediately after the Wings of Desire, the time we watched it. And I honestly don't know if that would have helped in my enjoyment of this movie or hindered my enjoyment of this movie. I honestly don't know. I think you summed it up perfectly in a way that it gives us some of everything we love about Wim, except in your case it also gives you one of the things that you least like about Wim, which is extensive philosophical dialogue musings. And I think the problem is when you get just a little bit of Wim, much like an interrupted road trip in his most famous work, it becomes a bit disjointed and you don't come along on the journey as well you would otherwise. It's hard to get in the flow of something that doesn't flow as coherently as these other movies. I think, and I'm going to call it out now,
2 hours 26 minutes to whatever it was is way too long for this movie. I mean, you couldn't stop Wim doing what he wants to do, but in a world where bloated Marvel movies and everything has to be over 2 hours, it was just too long. And it was too long because I was not as enjoying it as much as his other movies. Not that there's not stuff to enjoy, which I'll get to, but at the same time it's an odd thing because it's not like the 2 hours 26 minutes isn't justifiable because he sets out to give time to everything he wants to do, and there's so much jumping around with different vibes of Wim that you can't say it's unnecessary either. But yeah, it was difficult. I would say this is probably my second least favorite Wim now, after Paris, Texas. So yeah, movie starts off kind of similar to Wings of Desire, except from the other angel's point of view. I can't remember his name. Castiel, is it? I think it's Castiel. And like you, I surprisingly can't remember much about Wings of Desire, but Wim's movies are often a feeling more than a plot, except for maybe The American Friend. So I'm not surprised I can't remember the specifics of it, but I do remember we're following Bruno Gans's character mainly, and my hypothesis was that the angels are basically people who are trying to connect to the world, who can't summon their emotions. They're almost checked out. They're almost like depressed people. And Bruno Gans, through finding love and being able to connect with this person, is able to transition to a human and feel again. And he starts that relationship with that circus artist. So that's what I remember was my theory behind the first of the Wings franchise, as we're now calling it. So the movie does an interesting thing. Like you said, it follows a supporting character in the last movie and makes him the focal point. I'm sure it's been done before. I just have to think of some examples. I guess Sicario to an extent. Sicario Salgado. I'm sure it's been done a lot. Maybe it's not done in this type of movie. I don't know. So my reading of this movie, at least for the first while we're on Wings of Desire territory, is Cassiel's character's downfall, both figuratively and literally, I suppose, is he actually feels too much by this point. So unlike the character of Bruno Gans, who's unable to funnel his feelings and actually transition these feelings initially in the last movie, Cassiel feels too much, and he feels so much that he interferes, which we can presume is one of the things that you can't do if you're an angel. And he interferes, and immediately in that scene he becomes human, essentially. And at that point, and this again, it's all open to interpretation, I feel like when he becomes human, his feelings are too strong that he can't cope. He's almost like somebody who's bipolar. Anything he sees, he's now fully connected to because he's in human form, and he is not able to control his emotions at all. That's why he does impulsive stuff like robbing. He becomes basically an alcoholic. He is unable to cope. And I think there's a really interesting use of colour in this, because when he has his emotions under control, black and white is used. Whereas in Wings of Desire, black and white was used, in my opinion, to show a type of depression, a type of not being able to connect emotionally. In this, when colour's used, and there's a great transition back and forth between colour, I feel like the onset of colour, and the genius thing about this is that it's actually just normal colour. Because the movie is black and white, it just feels so extreme for the Wings franchise at this point, that we get this full palette of colour. And it's no different than a normal movie. It's no more different than a lot of Wim movies. It's not like it's Life of Pi or anything. But because we're not used to it, and combine that with the character's emotional state, it's actually overwhelming. I mean, this is a guy who goes around and goes into a art gallery, and he sees an expressionist type of art piece, and he is overwhelmed, and he's able to interpret what the artist feels so much that it takes him back to like Germany in the 1930s or 40s or whatever. So he can literally feel that pain so much, it's overwhelming, that he can't cope, that he ends up falling on the ground and screaming and whatnot. And even to begin with, when he saves the girl, it's kind of there as well, where she asks him to whisper, and he's having trouble whispering. He's asking him to shout, and he shouts. He's very volatile and not being able to control his emotions, which is quite interesting, because a lot of Wim's work is about observing writer's block, artistry, not being able to connect, being able to find the muse. In this, at least in the first half of the movie, I feel like it's very much about somebody who's so emotional and so unable to control how much they connect and how much they can feel, like empathy on crack, that it basically destroys them, and he ends up homeless. So I like that stuff. On an intellectual point of view, I got on board with the movie a bit more as well when he became human, because obviously there's a lot of monologues, and if my partner came in during that bit, she'd be thinking, "You watching those German movies again?" Not those type of German movies, but so mind you, in between some of those philosophical monologue musings, there were some really nice quotes actually that really made me feel anxious. And yeah, it's when the plot comes into this, it gets a bit dull for me. And I guess the best way to describe this film is it's not a Wonderful Life meets Terry Gilliam, taking place in an episode of Columbo. Literally starring Peter Falk at times. It's a strange one, isn't it? Because we do get this plot, this type of screwball comedy, but it's a bit absurd as well, in a way that something like The Fisher King is. That type of... There's a scene where they're literally doing acrobats, and they're getting all the German bombs and all that shit out, and they've hired up the fucking circus people who were just flipping out all the things. That's very The Fisher King, Terry Gilliam. But it's such a jarring turn from the first half of the film that obviously it doesn't work as nearly as well as something like The Fisher King. It's just weird. And There's a bit of that as well where he's jumping on down the bungee thing to save the girl as well. It's just you're expecting Robin Williams to come in and yell some comedy ad-libs at times, except there is no Robin Williams. And there's a scene as well where Peter Falk is on the TV with the security guys, and you know, they think they have cable, but it's Columbo. I like that stuff, but I feel like everything that I liked about this movie and everything that I almost disliked about this movie as well feels like they're leftover thoughts and leftover ideas in a way from the other movies. So I wonder, is this feels like it's a cobbled together different thoughts and different feelings of Wem from his other work, and that's a problem. It's a problem at a 2-hour 26 runtime. And on the other hand, I feel like this is some of the most capable camera work and framing of things that I've seen as well in a Wim Wenders movie. A lot of his movies that I wouldn't particularly say, oh, that the camera work and the directing flair, it enchanted me in his movies, but in this is probably the best I've seen him with his camera work and his adventureness. If that is an actual fucking word. Yeah, it's great as well to see William Dafoe. If anyone has an untrustworthy face, it's him. And like you mentioned, he's had such a great career. He's somebody who can show up in something like Nosferatu or the Florida Project, and it's something like the Florida Project, he can make you feel like he's an untrained actor that got cast, and that's a testament to his acting, because there's a lot of people that were just brought in for that movie. And then there's something like Nosferatu that's steeped in film history and goes back generations, and he seems like a study of that type of movie. And then you have something like Spider-Man where he can play an over-the-top villain. He's probably extremely underrated as an actor. And then you see him in this, and he's never nothing but good at the very least, isn't he? And like you, I struggled to figure out who this guy was exactly. Was he a demon? Was he a devil-like character? Was he a Machiavellian type figure? I didn't really know. And I don't think it's obvious. The only thing that grounded me in what he was is maybe something in a line of dialogue he says, where he says something along the line of, I'm not evil. He says something along the lines of, I'm not evil, I just don't have pity, I think he says. And that kind of sums it up, because a lot of these angels have compassion. A lot of these angels want to help out. Some of these angels do help out. Some of these angels literally become human because they want to make a difference. And then you have a version of an angel, presuming he is an angel, who basically doesn't give a damn, and that allows him the freedom almost to do whatever he wants. And I think the Cassiel character, he's somebody without fate, who has lost his fate and who has lost purpose. And he makes a point at one stage that humans don't believe in anything now, so they can make their own reality or come up with their own morale system, or basically free to do whatever they want. And I think the William Dafoe character is the manifestation of somebody who believes that and has become that, because let's say he is also human. He can be seen by humans and he can be seen by angels, which I think is the only being in that franchise that is able to do that. So I wonder, because he is free from any belief system, he is able to manifest his way in any belief system and basically cause fucking chaos. He seems both bad and sympathetic at times as well, but ultimately he does seem free from any morality system or any type of belief system. So yeah, I wasn't mad about this movie. Did find enough to enjoy to justify me watching it, let alone justifying the existence of the movie. Yeah, it's going to be hard to get motivated for any more Wim for a while, I think. There was one movie I wanted to watch, which is but now I'm less likely to want to watch it. So basically, it's a love letter to the Three Roads movies, but it's also a spin-off of that 5-hour franchise. That 5-hour science fiction movie. So I'm thinking, no way am I going to watch a 5-hour science fiction movie. I don't think it is 5 hours, but it's fucking long. And then, do I really want the greatest hits of the Road movie when I've watched the Road movies and I had a great time? I would say it was very good to see Vogler again, and he seems like a much more accomplished actor. I know he's got much less to do, but he's done more quote-unquote acting in that scene that we had him in at the end than I've seen in maybe any of his work. But yeah.
Yeah, couldn't agree more on Vogler. It's really nice to see someone that we've spent hours and hours watching and always thought, this guy's got something in terms of like a human you can put in front of a camera. He's a value add to the movies, but he's no great actor. And then to see him now, sort of 20 years after the movies we've seen him in, and he's actually, you know, he's able to hold his own. He's a decent thespian. So that was definitely a nice surprise. And, you know, I thought the acting was generally good throughout the film. I remember thinking in the first film that Solveig, whatever her name is, the muse, was sort of nothing special as a actress, or even as a sort of like manic pixie dream girl. But I think she leveled up her acting a bit in the movie. So yeah, it's nice hearing your thoughts on the movie. It's funny, like you're in that I've just watched a Wim Wenders movie bubble, and I'm in the I watched a Wim movie like yesterday space, which, as we know, are very different spaces to occupy. And it's not that I'm now coming back at you going, I think you'll find this is a masterpiece, you know, which has happened to me with his movies, where marinating on it for a day or two has kind of got me to the point of just thinking it was almost perfect. I watched this film, I think 2 days ago, if I'm not mistaken, and thinking about it, it hasn't been a movie that's been haunting me, like some Vim movies where you watch it and then you just kind of can't get it out of you. I think it is a lesser work, and, you know, I think it suffers personally in terms of my viewing of it from many things, like the fact that it's a sequel to a movie I've already seen a lot of these tricks. I'm kind of not hyper focused in on the Vim rhythm anymore because it's been a long time. But just having watched it a couple of days ago and then hearing you talk about it and casting my mind back to it, whilst I think it has a lot of problems, I've got a little bit of that old feeling back of like, man, it was a pleasure to just hang out in that city though, wasn't it? It was a pleasure to just walk those streets and kind of not know what you're going to run into. Like that classic Wim Wenders feeling, immersive feeling. And I think this is like, other films do this in a more human way. The Wings verse, as we'll call it, is is so elevated and kind of spiritual that it doesn't give you that full human, like immersed in it, boots on the ground kind of experience that some Wim Wenders movies do, but it still does it. And when I think back now on this adventure through Berlin, I think back on it very favorably, except for the plot stuff where it becomes, like, you reference Fisher King several times there in your voice note. I hadn't thought of Fisher King or Terry Gilliam, but that stuff is Fisher King through and through. I mean, it is Fisher King to a T. And we watched Fisher King a year or so ago, and I love Fisher King and I love Terry Gilliam. But I remember feeling that towards the end of that movie, it went a bit too far. And I think you didn't feel that. We had a little bit of disagreement on that. But it got very fairy tale, fantasy, like swashbuckling adventure, just like this film does, with him coming down on the bungee jump to rescue the girl and everything. And I felt like, it was keeping it a bit more grounded, that was working for me. And they went a bit too far. But this film, for me, the Terry Gilliam, I mean, not even Terry Gilliam, the Fisher King side of this movie, which I think is just like an absolute perfect way of describing it, doesn't work for me, doesn't complement the film. I'm not here for it. I think if you like that and you're enjoying it, then great. Like, it's not done badly. It's just not what I want from this film. It's not what I want from Wim Wenders. Like, the whole thing is just a bit of a mismatch for me. But yeah, it feels like too much of a party. Like, we've been watching something that's really complex and you have to kind of invest a lot to get more out of it, and it's open to interpretation and stuff like that. That's how the film is generally, and that's how Wings of Desire is generally. And then they throw you this party, which is like watching an Aardman movie or something, and it's just not right. So yeah, that to me, like, more than the length of the film or the fact that we've already seen Wings of Desire, I kind of don't feel the same way as you when you said that this is leftover ideas from Wings of Desire. I think it kind of has enough, there's enough there, like, for this to be a movie, but it's like it's two things, and the other thing I just don't particularly care for. So yeah, I agree on Willem Dafoe. It's amazing. Like, when you were like listing off some of his credits there, it came to mind that he's in Heaven's Gate. Now, it's a very miniature little role, but like, this dude has been in masterpieces for how long? How long ago was Heaven's Gate? Was that 50 years ago or something? He's been in masterpieces that long. Not saying this is a masterpiece, but he's been in masterpieces, and then he's been in, very like interesting, significant films like Faraway, So Close. So I think I never would have thought this about Dafoe, but just sort of assessing it all now, I think it's hard to think of a single actor that you can make a better case for their filmography. Obviously, you've got people like De Niro and stuff, but like, De Niro has completely checked out for 30 years or something. Like, Dafoe is still on the absolute cutting edge of like working with interesting directors, interesting projects. So yeah, nice to add another kind of deeper cut Dafoe performance to our knowledge of him. And I hear you on the kind of reluctance to revisit them. I had this movie, someone's beeping a horn for a very prolonged period of time. That's lovely. I had this like this movie kind of hanging over me, I suppose, for the last while. There's movies that I'm like, I'd like to watch at some point in my life, and they're like less pressing. They're like, yeah, oh man, I should really watch that movie. I know it's great. Oh, fucking everyone's always saying it's great. I don't know, I'll watch it someday. But then the problem with a movie like Faraway So Close, or if you want to call it a problem, is it's both something I put on the back burner, but also something that kind of feels like my opportunity to watch it is sort of like dwindling by the day. So, and it may have, to some extent, it kind of has actually dwindled, because if I'd watched this back in the Vim bubble, it probably would have been a somewhat better viewing experience. But yeah, I think we got, I don't want to say burnt out, but we watched a hell of a lot of these movies, and we wanted to move on to other things. And watching a 2.5-hour sequel to a movie that, even though it ends with to be continued or whatever, it is just absolutely not the type of movie that you're thinking, oh man, I can't wait for the sequel. Wait till I see what he does in the sequel to this. Like, although that isn't in and of itself quite interesting and quite, evokes some curiosity. But yeah, I definitely had reluctance to watch this movie. I think I probably had a better experience with it than you had, and I'm probably slightly less off the Vim train, or however you want to put it. I mean, I do feel like I could, if I picked the right project, I could definitely be up for watching a Vim movie immediately. But at the same time, I'm out of that. Like, I need to finally get more of his mindset that I was earlier in the year. So who knows whether I will or not watch more. And then just one other little point I wanted to pick you up on, because you said that you felt like the switches between black and white and color were reflecting his, I can't remember how you put it. Was it his mood, or, sorry, apologies, I actually can't remember exactly what you're saying, but I think you were mistaken. I think black and white is there when there's angels in the scene, and color when there isn't. When Natasha Kinski pops up, it switches to black and white, or when Cassiel is in angel form, the early parts of the movie, is black and white. And I think that is just stylistic continuity with the first film. So whenever we're seeing black and white, this is angel stuff, and whenever we see color, it's, the events are happening without angels being kind of involved or in the midst of it. So yeah, but it is a nice it's a nice technique. It's funny because the stuff that's fully black and white, that doesn't switch mid-shot, I imagine was shot on black and white film. The black and white photography in both this and the Wings of Desire look really great. And then the stuff where it's switching, they obviously have shot it in color film and converted it to black and white so they can do that back and forth switch, but it's matched perfectly and you can't really tell that. But yeah, all the black and white stuff is great. I think the first one maybe is a little bit more stunning. It's got a bit more, because its only job really, except for the very end, is just sort of showing Berlin, showing the city, whereas this has quite a lot of plot stuff going on. It's less of a sort of exhibit of a city in a way. So I think the first one probably is a bit more stunning in terms of cinematography and stuff, but still, and from a cinematography perspective, I prefer all of his earlier films that we've watched than Wings of Desire anyway. So, but yeah, anyway, glad to have caught up with it. I'm just out doing a bit of grocery shopping right now, so I'm gonna wrap that up and then head home, and then probably watch something very different to Faraway So Close, maybe some like trashy action movie or something like that.
Yeah, I know it's a technique on a very basic level, black and white angels, the color humans. I understand that. I'm saying that for me, in this movie and the prequel, or I mean the first movie and this movie, the color also represented a certain mental state of the angels in order to not being able to connect. So when we see the angels become in human form, there's sometimes a back and forth, like as in the William Dafoe character and stuff like that. But what it also is reflects the emotions they're able to access for me, it's not as simple as, oh, they're angels now and they're humans now. I think like Christopher Nolan and fucking Oppenheimer, the past and the present. For me, it represents also the emotions they're able to access by becoming human. So everything they can taste, they can feel, they can breathe, they can literally feel their own blood. So the fact that they have access to color, which is also representative of the fact that the angel didn't even know his eye color, and he said, "Oh, my eye color is blue. Who would thought?" The angels don't have access to that color and that emotion. So I don't think it's as simple as a just way of telling the story so you don't get confused. I think it directly references their emotional state and what feelings they're able to access. Yeah, saying that, I said I'm off the Wim train, but I've just downloaded Lisbon Story, which is 140 minutes. And I did that on the strength that I want to see what Vogler can do now in a movie in 1994. And I also, it's short. Like I can jump back into a 1 hour 40-minute Wim movie. No, a lot easier than a kind of 2 hour whatever Wim movie, or even a 2 hour movie in general. And just a final word on William Dafoe. Just look there. So since 1981, he's only managed to not do a film 1 year, and that's 1983. And after that, he's doing a film each year. And if you look on the last, like, at least 10 years, maybe, he's done like 4 or 5 films a year, and good films too. He's not going down the Nicolas Cage DVD or Bruce Willis direct to DVD route. He's banging out work, like really good work. Just look at his filmography and the amount of work he does. How does he even do it? But yeah, it to be continued with this Vim journey.
It's funny you said I could watch a 1 hour 40-minute Vim movie. You missed your one shot at saying I can watch a 1 hour and 40-minute movie on a whim. Yeah, I'm up for that. Let's do that. And yeah, good point on the black and white thing. Yeah, I'm on that level of, it is about when there's an angel in the presence, but it perfectly depicts the difference between like being able to access the fullness of human experience compared to the detached experience of being the kind of angel onlooker. Yeah, it works really well as a visual indicator of that. So yeah, teasing out more value from this movie, and maybe in 48 hours time you might be a big fan of it. So we'll see.
Your mailbox is full. Please delete new or stored messages which you no longer need so that new messages may be received.